Hello. Today I'm going to read through the first chapter of my book, The Bahai Faith, A Short History. This one dealing with the Islamic and Iranian background of the Babi movement. The chapter itself consists of three sections: the Islamic context, particularly 12 of Shi'ism, 19th century Iran, and Shaykhism. Obviously, all of these subjects are being dealt with in a very superficial and summary fashion here, and I will give some references below the video for those interested in studying them properly. So let's now get into the actual chapter, starting off talking about the Islamic and Iranian background. The Bahai Faith centers on the person of Baha'u'llah, its prophet founder, but to understand its origins we must examine both the Babi movement, from which it emerged, and the complex world of mid-19th century Iranian Shi'ism, in which Babism was rooted. The Bahai Faith has long since developed in ways that make it distinctively different from Islam, but some reference to these Islamic and Iranian roots is essential. Not only did the Babi religion emerge as a movement within Shi'i Islam, but the Babis and early Baha'is were almost all Iranians who had formerly been Shi'i Muslims. The writings of the Bab, the founder of Babism, and to a lesser extent those of Baha'u'llah, are pervaded by Islamic concepts, and many Babi and Bahai practices bear an obvious resemblance to those of Islam. Resemblance and derivation are not the same as identity, of course, and to describe the Bahai Faith as a Muslim sect, as some writers are still inclined to do at the time of this book's writing anyway, is highly misleading and as inaccurate as describing 2nd century Christianity as a Jewish sect. Those aspects of the Islamic tradition that are replicated most clearly in the Babi and Bahai religions concern the concepts of revelation and holy law. Thus, in all three religions, it is believed that God has addressed humanity through a series of divinely appointed messengers, including Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, and that divine guidance for the present age is partially enshrined in a body of holy law based on scriptural revelations brought by the latest divine messenger. It is these same points, however, that most sharply separate the Babis and Baha'is from Orthodox Muslims. For Muslims, Muhammad is the seal of the prophets, understood to mean the last, and the Islamic holy law, the Sharia, provides the standard for human behavior until the resurrection, the Abbas. For Babis and Baha'is, the resurrection has already come. The Bab and Baha'u'llah are divine messengers. Baha'is generally use the term manifestations of God rather than prophets, and include Krishna, Zoroaster, and the Buddha in their list of manifestations. And Islamic law has been abrogated and replaced by the successive revelations of the Bab and Baha'u'llah as the proper guides for human beings in the contemporary world. These later revelations contain elements reminiscent of Islam, but are at the same time distinctively different. I'll talk about that in a later chapter. The branch of Islam that formed the primary matrix in which the Babi and Bahai religions developed was Twelver Shi'ism, the state religion of Iran since the 16th century. Shi'ism differs from the Sunni Islam of most Muslims in various ways. Central to it is the devotion shown to a series of imams, leaders, who were related to the Prophet Muhammad and whom Shi'is regard as the recipients of divine grace and guidance. A Shi'i is a partisan of the Imams. Various Shi'i sects have developed over time, each with its own distinctive teachings and list of Imams. The Twelvers, now the largest of the various Shi'i groups, recognize a succession of 12 Imams, starting with Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and continuing through his descendants until Muhammad al-Mahdi, who disappeared mysteriously in the year 873-874 in the Christian calendar. That's 260 in the Hijrah. In the absence of the Imam, Twelver Shi'ism has developed an intense messianic motif. The 12th Imam is regarded as hidden from the eyes of the faithful until the end of time, when he will return to vanquish his opponents and establish a kingdom of peace and justice. Messianic beliefs are also found in Sunni Islam, forming a recurrently active element in popular religion, but receive little official sanction. Shi'is regard the writings, sayings, and deeds of the Imams as an additional source of divine guidance to the revelations of the Quran and the oral statements and practices, the hadith, attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. In this, they diverge sharply from the Sunnis, for whom only the latter constitute the basis for their path of tradition, the Sunnah. Differences in ritual practice, social law, and religious beliefs follow from these divergences, including a far greater readiness on the part of some Shi'i thinkers to study Gnosticism. One such Gnostically inclined group, the Shaykhis, played a key role in the genesis of Babism. Institutionally, the Twelver Shi'ism also diverges from Sunnism in the role assumed by the religiously learned, that is, the ulama. This has changed over time, reflecting the various fortunes of Shi'ism, but since the late 17th century, the ulama have been able to establish a degree of authority and autonomy from government control unparalleled in Sunni states. The nature of the Islamic Revolution in Iran, which took place in 1979, reflects this development, and the power of the clerical establishment was a major factor in both the expansion and persecution of the Babi movement. Shi'ism also contains a strong popular emphasis on suffering and martyrdom that is not found in Sunnism. This stems from the oppression and persecution that have been part of the historical existence of the Shi'is as a minority group. The supreme embodiment of this was the killing of Ali's son, the Prophet's grandson, Imam Hussein, at the Battle of Karbala in Iraq in 680, an incident that is still commemorated by the Shi'is with great emotional intensity. For their part, the Babis readily identified with the faithful defenders at Karbala during their own sufferings, and Babi and later Bahai readiness to suffer martyrdom became a major proof of their mission for some Shi'is. Turning now to 19th century Iran. As a modern country, Iran came into being during the 16th century rule of the Safavids, with Shi'ism coming to act as an important force holding the disparate elements of the population together. Following a period of collapse and fragmentation, the Qajar tribe established a new period of unitary dynastic rule in 1794. The Qajar dynasty remained nominally in power until 1925. Delegating considerable power to provincial governors, the Qajars acted as suzerains over an enormous empire 3 times the size of France, but with large areas of sparsely populated desert, semi-desert, or mountainous terrain. In the towns, urban elites of military personnel, high-ranking ulama, landowners and merchants enjoyed considerable independence, dominating both urban life and the largely powerless and illiterate peasantry of the surrounding hinterland. Elsewhere, tribes of nomadic and semi-nomadic pastoralists came and went generally as they pleased, frequently dominating the settled population. The state religion was Twelver Shi'ism, yet there was a perceptible tension between the secular powers and the ulama, possessing their own economic resources from land grants and religious taxes, and with key institutions located outside Iranian control in the Shi'i shrine cities of Iraq, particularly in Najaf and Karbala, the burial places of the Imams Ali and Hussein, respectively. The higher-ranking ulama frequently assumed a major role in urban politics. They also exercised patronage over the lower-ranking ulama, including village mullahs and the bevy of students of sacred law and theology. A clearly defined hierarchy amongst the higher ulama had not then fully developed, and individual mujtahids, that is, those who were qualified to exercise their own judgment in matters of religious law, functioned relatively independently of each other, guiding their followers and on occasion becoming involved in bitter disputes with their fellows. Disputes between mujtahids sometimes followed legal or theological divisions. Such was the case with the emergence of Shaykhism in the early 19th century. Originating in the doctrines of an Arab Shi'i teacher, Sheikh Ahmad al-Asai, Shaykhism gained a wide following in Iran and Iraq, both amongst the ulama and their lay followers. It was opposed by other ulama who considered it dangerously heterodox, and under the leadership of the Sheikh's successor, Sayyid Kazem Rashdi, it increasingly took on a sectarian appearance. Much early Shaykhi literature is highly abstruse, but it seems clear that in addition to an extreme veneration of the Imams, the Shaykhi leaders promulgated an essentially Gnostic interpretation of Islam, in which they themselves occupied a special position as the unveilers of hidden and esoteric knowledge. They may also have taught at least some of their disciples that the resurrection was near. Thus, there was a widespread response to the Bab's declaration among the Shaykhi community. If you want to support my channel, you're very welcome to like, subscribe, and giving you the details below. Okay, thank you. Have a good day.